You're recognized for a question.
All right, thank you.
No, I'm just kidding. You're recognized for an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the West Gallery, we have two visitors from Massachusetts and Rhode Island, Mr. Joe Rico and Mr. Charlie Barger, along with Bobby Peoples. If y'all would, please stand and let the Senate make you welcome.
Thank you, Senator Harkins. Now, Mr. Chairman, do you yield?
Yes.
You recognize Senator Harkins.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, in Section 4, this section deals with park testing, and I have a constituent that's made this question to me several times, and he's very concerned about it, but he is holding his child out of park testing this year. And what his concern is whether or not his child will be able to graduate. He's a ninth grader. If parents hold their children out of park testing this year, are their children going to be able to graduate when they reach 12th grade?
I mean, my opinion on what I know, they should be able to graduate. I don't know. Are they withdrawing them from school?
No.
Okay.
They're just withholding them from the park testing.
Right. I don't know what the response is, but they certainly should be able to graduate, is my opinion. And I think ultimately that's a decision of the local school district.
Okay. And park testing will be no longer...
After this year, correct.
After this year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Harkins. Senator Gary Jackson for purpose use of recognition.
For a question.
Mr. Chairman, you for a question.
Yes.
You recognize Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, is there any other vehicle alive that we could address Common Core with?
At this late day, this is addressing it. I think this is the best vehicle, and you can get involved. You can go to the hearings and state your position on things, and if parents in your district are concerned, they will have hearings across the state. It's the intent of the legislature. Or you can submit names of teachers who are interested in this. So I think this is the best vehicle we have.
Forgetting about the name Common Core, I think one of the concerns of many conservatives like myself are the overreach of the federal government into education. Would you classify this as a step in the right direction away from that?
Yes, absolutely. These are Mississippi standards, and we want high standards. And I think this is an effort to continue moving towards high achievement for our students. I mean, it's not something that can be done overnight, but I think we're taking the right steps.
Does the final conference report, still have in it the language that prohibits the sharing of our children's data, that identifiable?
Right. We discussed that, and you can't do that without parental consent.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Jackson. Senator Blunt, for what purpose do you seek? Senator Sojourner, for what purpose do you seek recognition?
Just a couple of questions, Mr. President.
This is Chairman Yield for a couple of questions.
Yes.
You recognize Senator Sojourner.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman. And I think, I'm sitting here going through my notes, Chairman, and I think a lot of these things have been addressed. I know it's an 11-member commission. And I think Senator Watson brought up the topic about originally we had 10 years of experience on the teachers, and it's been moved to 5. And I know that you made a couple of comments on that regard. In the conference committee, I mean, we're talking about developing recommendations for, the bottom line is that we're talking about the future of the children of this state. Why would we not want the best of the best, the most, I mean, we have some amazing teachers that have been working 20, 30, 40. Why wouldn't we want teacher, I mean, why 5 years? Can you explain to me what
that's a floor. So
right.
I think there's some outstanding teachers who have been 5 years, 5 to 10 years, but 10 to 20. I think this just gives you a wider selection that you could have with the 5 years. So that was all. And I mean, ultimately, the decision is going to be made by the governor, lieutenant governor, and the speaker. And I think they're very capable of selecting people who will be outstanding. So.
Sure. And speaking on those appointments and who makes those selections. Now, one of the appointments is from the Department of Education.
Right.
Is there no, I don't really see that there's any, I mean, can they just appoint anyone? Is there really no criteria to who they can? It says that that the board is not limited to appointing.
Right. One person or parent or educator who's demonstrated expertise in development or implementation of educational standards. So, I mean, it's 1 out of 11. So, and it is the State Department of Education. So I think that afforded one, they certainly can have input and suggestions, and it might certainly be helpful.
Okay. Okay. One of the other things is it says over here on line 93, it talks about to the extent that funds are available. I'm assuming those are funds available from the Department of Education?
Yes.
Or where would those funds come from?
I think so, and I think that was where it would be coming from.
Because the language is not tied down to anything. I mean,
I think that will be taken care of, though.
okay. I mean, is there any limit? There's just no language in here as far as amount of money or where it comes from. So I'm just wondering, is there any? I mean, could they spend $500,000? Could this commission?
I think that's something that will, once they convene, that will be determined what needs they have.
Okay. Okay. Now, one question, and it's a little bit along the lines of where Senator Harkins was. I have a constituent in my district, a child who is preparing to graduate. She's been at the same district for 12 years, and she will graduate with a near 4.0 average. However, because she did not pass the standardized test, she is being told by her school district that she cannot walk with her class. Now, I know this says beginning this school year that schools may not, but I want to make sure that that's an individual school district choice, correct?
No. You're talking about lines 181?
Yes.
Okay. These are the subject area tests. There are 4 of them. The previous rule was that you had to pass it in order to graduate. The state board acted the end of last month to change that. This is basically codifying that decision. It will go into effect immediately. So my understanding is that if that person, and I can't remember the rules, but they issued some rules about that, and I think they should be able to walk. I've got a similar situation, and several other people across the state. So.
Okay. I know a couple of questions have come up about federal mandates. I think Senator Jackson talked to that. On line 186, starting 185, I guess, it says education shall adopt policy requiring the administration of those end-of-the-year tests mandated under the federal requirements for No Child Left Behind.
Those are mandated. And they'll yank $800 million out of our school district, or threaten to, but it's just part of there are 3 tests that's mandated. So, and that may change with the reauthorization. I don't know that answer. But again, all that aside, I think it's good that we do have tests to make sure children are learning. How else do we know if they've learned what was taught to them?
Okay. I know Senator Watson went through these, and you look through these 6 responsibilities, and it says recommend. You look at the first word of each responsibility: recommend, consider, review, examine. It's clear that this is just an advisory board.
Well, again, an advisory, I think it's more of they have a directive, and the directive is make recommendations. I think advisory would just sit back and not be proactive. This group, we're charging them with a directive, and they're going to be proactive to study the existing standards, look at other states, bring in experts, discuss it among themselves, and either make clarifications, changes, whatever their recommendation is. So I think this is going to be much more than an advisory. This is a commission with a charge from the legislature to take action and report back their action by December 1st of this year.
Okay. Senator Tolson, will you agree with me at the beginning of the school year, hundreds, if not thousands, of parents from around the state had rallying cries to kill Common Core? There were a number of legislators in this chamber who voted to vote to kill Common Core in the state. There were statewide elected officials who said we support killing Common Core. I think we came into this chamber at the beginning of the year with that intent to debate on that topic. And so I guess I just want to make sure that at the end of the day, the only vehicle that we have left, the only thing that's left on the table, is a bill that develops a study commission to develop recommendations by 11 people that has a 6-month shelf life, that at the end of the day really has no teeth to put anything into place other than recommendations. I mean, is that where we are after where we started at the beginning of the...
And I think it's a good product out of the legislative process that you found some middle ground. You've got a commission that, if this passes, will start June 1st, work hard and look at the issues. And I think that's an important part of this, to be part of the legislative process, and that's where it came from. And you got to take into consideration these standards that teachers and schools have literally spent millions of dollars and hours on at the same time. But at the same time, the legislature comes back 2016. If they think that changes are necessary, then that can be done. I mean, after looking at the recommendations, that's what I've said earlier. So the legislature comes back every year, and if those changes need to be occurred and needs to be codified in statute, that can be done. There's nothing to prohibit that from happening.
Do you have an opinion one way or the other? Before this state adopted Common Core and moved in that direction, do you have an opinion one way or another that what the state was doing just prior to that was any better or any worse? I mean, was it worse than Common Core? We've only been a couple of years into this.
I'm not an expert, but I know that there was an independent done, and some people agree or disagree, and it was not as good. I think the standards we can always improve. Everything can be improved, and I mean, looking at Florida, obviously there's some clarifications that they think, and I think that in of itself speaks to the need for this commission to at least do clarifications, additions, and cursive writing. So, yeah, I mean, I think that, but I think they're better than our old standards. I think that anybody would say that. But, you know, it's not an easy process, too. I mean, you know, it's hard for the teachers. It's hard for parents understanding this math about the value sets. Or, you know, it's a new process. But I think this country needs to look at what other countries are doing and how they're achieving way ahead of us. In Mississippi, being where we are, that we need to look at a better way. But once we meet those standards, we got to be consistent. We got to be consistent, and that's what's been frustrating to me is the testing, everything. But let's get this in place and see what happens. Come back next year and have some consistency, so our teachers don't have to throw out the old books and put in new books. You know, that's very disruptive to the educational process, not only to the teachers, parents, but to the students as well. So.
Could we have, if we were going to end up with a commission to study, develop, recommend, and hopefully the department at some point moves towards some statewide standards, I mean, could we have killed Common Core before we moved?
I don't know the answer to that question. That's a good question. And
I mean, it seems like we could have killed it. We could have killed Common Core and still worked toward developing something better. I mean, worst case scenario.
I don't know. I mean, I think that's a what if, and there's a lot of what ifs. I mean, that's a hypothetical, and I just don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. I have no. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Sojourner. We have one final question. Senator Parker. Mr. Chairman, do you yield?
Yes.
Also, we've had great debate, great talk on this year. You kind of know how I am on things. I sit back, I kind of listen and try to process everything as we go through it. And as I look at this, there have definitely been some moves made, I would say, in the correct direction. But at least from my constituents, what I continue to hear is that the level of this problem from the people who I'm in contact with, the teachers and parents, other people like that, is at a major level. And as I look at the recommendations here and the potential recommendations, it seems to me that this is a problem that requires major surgery. And what I look at the recommendations being like is at best a commission that might recommend minor surgery. And I always think that if someone requires any type of surgery, minor surgery to me is surgery on somebody else. So if this issue really requires a major addressing, I just wonder if you really think that the commission and the surgeon at the end, which is going to be the superintendent of education, is prepared to make the decision to do the surgery that some of the members of this body think that this issue requires.
And I'll address this, like I said, to Senator Sojourner. This recommendations will come back to the legislature. That's this body here and that body over there. And the State Board of Education. The State Board of Education will be charged of whether these standards are adopted or not. If they're not, this legislative body, if they so choose, can take action. And you remember that, and you're the one that can make that decision. If you can convince a majority of your colleagues that that's what the right thing to do is. So you're the surgeon, and all these members, if that's the way you want to allude to.
Right.
I mean, it's ultimately up to that state board based on the recommendations. And again, even if you look at these Florida changes, you know, it's something that I think will be embraced. And actually, there may be other states that have done changes on different things. But let's let this body have an opportunity to work, and I think you'll see a positive outcome, and input from parents in DeSoto County as well.
And one more, just I guess follow up on that too, gets back to, I'm continuing the same analogy here. If I feel strongly that we may have a surgeon who doesn't want to operate, would you say it would be in my best interest to vote no on this bill?
Doesn't want to operate. Well, I'll say this. I want a surgeon who is a medical doctor, not some hack is out there that, say, what did Senator Bryant say? Brain surgery real cheap. And I think that's what the point of this is. Let's let educators who are experts in standards and not legislators who are not expert in standards make these decisions. Just like a surgeon, I want a good heart surgeon that's board certified to operate on my heart, not some, other person that's not board certified heart surgeon. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Senator. At this point, I'm going to recognize Senator McDaniel to speak on the bill. We're on final passage. Senator McDaniel, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. If you all will indulge me just for a moment, I do recognize as I stand here what apparently is clear a minority position again, but it's something that I feel compelled to address nevertheless. When I was campaigning last year around the state, one of the primary things people would tell me about politicians in general is that they claim to do one thing, but then they get to Washington and they invariably do the other. They claim to believe one thing, but then they get to Jackson and they invariably do the other. It's the inconsistency of the politician that draws the anger from the people. It's the inconsistency of our positions that draw their ire. It's a trait driven in large part by self-preservation. We all, each of us, want to be reelected, so naturally play the game. And the reason I think this is relevant for this particular position is that this bill is nothing more than a continuation of that game. Senate Bill 2161 does absolutely nothing to repeal Common Core. It purports to do one thing. It pretends to do one thing. It sends the message that it's doing one thing. And in so doing, it provides each of us political cover so we can go home and tell our constituents one thing and then come back to Jackson and do the other. The details of the bill matter. We're creating a commission that has no power. A commission that's simply advisory in its stances and positions. A commission that's going to suggest something to the State Board or the State Department of Education, who have already made their positions perfectly clear that they have no intention to change a single thing in regards to Common Core. Kerry Wright's made it clear. The others have made it clear. The superintendents have made it clear. So a commission is going to speak to those whose mind is already determined and made up. Good cover for politicians, but not very practical. You see, I'm concerned. I'm confused. Where's the opposition to Common Core? It would seem that if you're for Common Core, you should stand here and state your convictions in front of the people of this state. But likewise, it would seem that if you're against Common Core, you should stand here and be against it. Don't create a commission to hide behind that does nothing, that has no authority, that has no power. People are watching. They're still watching. They're watching now. And they should be watching. These moms out there that are fighting alongside of their kids every evening because of Common Core, something I can speak about directly because I do have a child in second grade public school. I've seen what it's done. I've seen the confusion on its face. I understand the ramifications of the decision. And that's why it's unusual to me to watch us kick this can down the road and then assume that we'll come back and fix it in a non-election year. I've been here 8 years. I've heard that a lot. We're always going to come back and fix something in a non-election year, and it never, ever happens. I will submit to you that if we pass this bill, you'll never see a change, a significant change in Common Core. And the reason for that is because we have found our cover. We'll go home and talk about the commission. And if the commission fails, we'll blame the commission. It wasn't us, after all. We abdicated that power, at least in an illusory state. And those of you that stand to say you're for it, or maybe you're against it, we just don't know, you claim that this is somehow a step in the right direction. Is it? This isn't a step in the right direction. It's not even a lean in the right direction. You claim that we'll make the changes later. I find that suspect, to say the least. And then they claim, lastly, that these are the experts in the standards. Well, who made the standards prior to Common Core? I thought that was the State Department of Education. Weren't they already experts in education? Weren't they already experts in the standards? They made the standards before. They abdicated the responsibility because they thought they could lay their hands on $4.35 billion of federal aid. That's what this is about. It's about the money. Ladies and gentlemen, don't hide behind the bill. If you're for Common Core, say so. If you're against it, say so. But don't claim we've made a step in the right direction with this bill. This bill means nothing. This bill does nothing. And I'll just close with this, a couple of more prospects just to consider. The same organization, that is the Mississippi State Department of Education, that adopted Common Core because they were seeking $4.35 billion or a stake thereof, are the same ones now we think are going to change their minds simply because the commission suggests some changes. Keep in mind, it's that same group that needs the No Child Left Behind waivers to avoid the financial sanctions that are sure to come if they don't adopt Common Core. Here's the language. Here's the language. If you look at the program's executive summary, it says that one of the criteria for reform so happens to be using what's called a common set of high-quality standards that have been adopted by a significant number of states. No other program fits that but Common Core. Rename it, rebrand it, change it all you wish. They won't change the substance of it because they don't want to let go of the possibility of receiving federal funds. That's what this boils down to. It's smoke and mirrors. It's cover for the circus. Better yet, it's full of sound and fury, and it signifies absolutely nothing. If you're for Common Core, stand up and say it. If you're against it, stand up and say it. But don't seek cover with this bill. This bill needs to die.
Senator Jordan, for what purpose do you seek recognition?
I have a question for the Speaker. For Senator McDaniel.
Does Senator McDaniel yield for a question?
Yes.
You're recognized,
Yes.
Senator Jordan.
Senator McDaniel, what do you have against, do you know how Common Core came into being?
Yes, sir.
Know its origin? Do you know its origin?
Yes, sir, I do.
All right. 75% of the governors, even more, of the 50 states got together, made a recommendation, including the popular governor of this state. Will you agree?
What happened, Senator Jordan? They did what a lot of governors do and politicians do under difficult circumstances. They saw the possibility of receiving federal funds, and they rushed into a program before they had the chance to research it.
Are you against
And that's why a number of those governors now are beginning the opt-out process, even as we speak, including our own governor and Governor Jindal of Louisiana.
Are you against federal funds?
No, sir. I'm for constitutionally spent funds. And there are certain things the federal government does very well and should be doing it. I am not against federal funds. They should be spent according to the Constitution of the United States.
But before Common Core, whatever we had in place, we've been on the bottom of the bottom for a long, long time.
Well,
and what
Senator,
are you suggesting, since you're against Common Core, and I don't know what you're for, what do you suggest that would get us off the bottom?
Well, it sounds like you just indicted the entire State Department of Education. If
Well,
that's
so be it. I'm talking about getting us off the bottom, sir.
At least you're being honest about it. The point is, the same State Department of Education that promulgated standards prior to Common Core is the same Department of Education that's going to be listening to the recommendations of an illusory committee.
Well, what do you recommend?
It's the same people, Senator. Perhaps it's time to change some of the members of the Department of Education.
Well, there's something called enlightenment. Some of the same people can become enlightened and do better.
How many years have you served in this body, Senator?
23 years.
Well, in 23 years, you should have taken some action to make a difference.
Should have done what?
Should have taken the action to make a difference, if that's what you're claiming now.
Well, that's what
You've had 23 years to make a difference.
Well, that's what I'm trying to talk to you about, making a difference.
Let's talk about it.
You're debating, but you don't have anything to offer. in place of Common Core. You fighting Common Core. You don't have anything constructive to offer.
Absolutely, I do. I would trust
What
those
would
same
you offer?
members. I would trust those same members of the Department of Education that you're trusting now to adopt or not adopt the recommendations from a council that's created so you can have political cover back home.
And where would those recommendations come from?
Well, the recommendations have always come from the State Department of Education. That's been that way since you've been in this body.
Well, then let's allow them to try it again, even though they made mistakes. As an attorney, you made mistakes, but you didn't stop practicing law because you made some mistakes, did you? Or did you not?
I thought you were the one proposing change, Senator. It sounds like you're arguing for the status quo.
No, I'm not arguing for no status quo. I'm arguing to try to get us off the bottom. But you're not offering anything constructive to get us off the bottom.
I am suggesting to you that a commission is not going to offer anything constructive either, because the same Department of Education that made the decision prior to Common Core is going to be the same Department of Education that's going to be making the recommendations post Common Core.
Yes, sir. Just finally, there are other states who are using Common Core principles, just a standard, and they are doing yeoman's job. They're not on the bottom. Why, when we use Common Core, we have to be stuck on the bottom? So it may be something we're doing wrong. All of the other states, many of those 45 or 46 states that adopted Common Core, all of them are not doing bad. They are not on the bottom.
And
So Common Core is not your cause for being on the bottom.
And your proposal is that a 6-month commission that has no power outside of an advisory power is somehow going to change that?
I don't know what it's going to take to change it. It could, because people do have change in mind. People do become enlightened by experience. I'm not saying you made mistakes 10 years ago, you won't make the same ones now. I hope you've been enlightened. You've improved yourself.
Well, perhaps after another 23 years in the Senate, we'll make some changes.
No, we can make some now if we do the right thing instead of stumbling into the future backward.
I'm curious, what's your evidence that Common Core works?
What am I what?
What's your evidence that Common Core works?
Common Core is just a standard. We need to be measured by something. Look, when I left Mississippi to go out west to school, I had to compete just like anybody else came from any other state. So I think students can do in Mississippi what they do in New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, or anywhere else.
Yeah,
but we just have to focus on something.
We do. I agree. And that's why my father was a college professor, why my mother-in-law has been a 40-year school teacher, why my wife has been a 15-year school teacher, why my kids are in public schools. I'm very aware of the problem. I'm very aware of the issue. My position is having an advisory council with no teeth is doing nothing to change.
Well, you're talking about somebody else who have done it. I'm talking because I've done it for 33 years, and I know we are able to compete. I don't duck any standard. I don't care what states have them. If they're good, they're good. Saying, let me finish, saying that Common Core is all bad, I think we're riding for a fall if we listen to that.
I'm not going to argue with you, Senator Jordan. On one hand, you say we can compete. On the other hand, you say we can't compete. One hand, you say...
Well, we can't compete when we stop, when we change.
You've taken so many contrary positions, I can barely remember them all.
Well, you have to do a complete analysis on me. It's going to take this, and it's going to take some gray matter to do the analysis that I'm trying to explain to you. It doesn't mean I'm wrong.
I'm sure that makes sense to someone somewhere.
Thank you, Senator McDaniel. Senator Hill, would you, for what purpose do you seek recognition?
I'd like to speak on the bill, Mr. President.
You are recognized to speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill that's before us does not give everything that I'd like it to give. But I can positively assure you that I'm not looking for any political cover, because personally, I do what I think is right. I think that for 2 years, I've been trying to get a vehicle to do something about Common Core. I have traveled all over this state at my own expense. I have studied countless hours. I have worked with the most conservative national groups in this state, including the American Principles Project, including Dr. Sandra Stotsky, who was on the Common Core Validation Committee and did not sign off. I have worked with Dr. James Milgram through emails back and forth. Zeev Werman, who wrote California's exemplary math standards. I have worked with these people to try to get some type of vehicle or some type of language to where we at least can have a public conversation. We have not gotten anything out of this legislature. I'm not going to vote against this bill, even though it doesn't do everything that I want it to do. But I think it's the only potential to do something about Common Core at this point. If you think that there's not going to be a bill next year, then there may not be a bill next year. But I can positively assure you that I'm going to file one if that commission, no matter what its recommendations are, I'm going to file a bill next year. I can promise you that I'm going to file a bill next year. It may go nowhere. I don't know what they're going to recommend, but I would hope that with the amount of concern that we have across the state with Common Core, that we could get some more people involved to look at what's happening. Florida did come back with some good recommendations. If we can get certain things put into this, I'd like to scrap it. But it's very obvious that I don't have the votes in this chamber nor that one to scrap it, or we'd be scrapping it. But we do have the votes to at least try to get something done about it. Now, if we put people on this commission that are going to do nothing and rubber stamp what the Board of Education wants, then there's going to be more elections down the road, and I guarantee you some people are going to wear it like a millstone around their neck. And if they don't do anything, I'll be the first person in the press telling you that that's a do-nothing commission. And it may be a do-nothing commission, but right now, that's my only option. If I vote to kill this bill, then I get nothing. And I don't care if I have any political cover. Understand? There is some good language in this bill for data protection. If we get nothing else out of it, we have gotten some good language in here to protect your students' religious, political, psychological, and socio-emotional data from being collected and distributed amongst God knows who. Because that's none of anybody's business to take personal information from students, and it's happening all over this state. If we don't get anything else, we will get it in statute that those schools cannot do that, and if they continue to do it, then there's grounds for a lawsuit by a parent. But right now, there's not, because federal requirements to protect data have been gutted. So we're going to be relying on a state statute to protect data. I would like for this legislature to take my advice 2.5 years ago, because there are deficiencies in those standards, and I think Senator Tolleson stood here and read you some stuff from Florida, from Jeb Bush's old state, the Common Core master, Jeb Bush. In his own state of Florida said, no, there's deficiencies in these standards. And if we can't throw it out, we at least need to put the things back into the standards framework in this state that will give kids an opportunity to compete. That's my concern. I don't care about the politics. I want my grandchildren to get the same education that I got, to be able to go like my daughter is and be in the top 10 out of 1,750 students at the University of Southern Mississippi. That's what I want. And I can promise you that I might feel good like I've done something if I vote for this bill, vote against this bill, and say, well, I didn't get what I want, so I'm voting against it. But I want an opportunity. And that's the only way that I know to get any opportunity out of this legislature right now is to vote for this bill and hope and pray to God that this commission does something to make things better and to give some relief. These teachers are pulling their hair out with park testing. These fifth graders are pecking on computers on a time test and they don't know how to type, okay? Somebody's going to be held accountable for that if we don't get rid of it. This bill doesn't have as strong a language for park testing in it that I'd like it to say no items from a test. But if we can keep the test, the whole test, with the data collection from park from coming into the school system, then I think something's been accomplished. So you do what your heart tells you to do. You don't have to vote with me. But I'm not going to vote against this bill. I'm going to vote for it. Because I want to say that at least there is something that we can try to do. And if some want to call it political cover, call it what you want. I don't care. I think most of y'all have known me long enough that I don't care if everybody agrees with me. I'm going to do what I think is right. Thank you.
I'm going to recognize Senator Tolson to close.
Afternoon roll call.
Use of the afternoon roll call has been suggested. Morning roll call has been suggested for final passage. Is there any objection? Would anyone like to be recorded as voting no? Senator McDaniel and Senator Sojourner and Senator Watson and Senator Frazier and Senator Bryant would like to be recorded as voting no. Please record. Senator Horn is voting no. Please record the rest of the Senate as voting aye, and the conference report is adopted. We are now on item number 59.